So this is part two. I didn't expect it to be a part two. I didn't do the other one with the Zoom because there was just some people had some issues with the Zoom recording, but I might have to try that again because I went to show you a the handout and it didn't work. So here's part two. So I started talking about that. One of the ways I talk about grading is with characters. So I want you to look at the handout about 8 tips for developing a character. And in it, there's going to be things like what information do you reveal, right? Um, what do you tell everything about the character up front? Do you tell a little bit? Do you have to spread it out? Do you have to? When does the reader know? When does the reader need to know what about the character, right? And I also talk about give the character a motivation, a want. I often say, what does a character want, right? They want to achieve something. They want to get something. They want to graduate. They want to have a baby. They want to get married. What do they want, right? I'm basing this off the stories you gave. But remember, this next version, totally new story, okay? So what else? Think of the story, think of the characters' lives before they existed, right? Before you began writing their story, right? If you're writing a character that's in their 20s or in their 30s, they had a whole life before that. What was that life like, right? Actors do this exercise. They do, when they're learning a character, they try to imagine what the character's life is like before the play began. They try to imagine what kind of music they like to listen to. They try to imagine what food they like to eat. They think about like what clothes do they like to wear? How do they shop? How do they move? What are the gestures they make, right? So think about your characters that way. So it's important to develop the characters, right? Make sure you have well-rounded characters. They don't have to always be round characters, if you know what I'm talking about, but they should be well-rounded, right? And what I mean by round is I give you specific, like we did some notes are about characters, round characters, flat characters. The characters be one or the other, and that one or the other is not necessarily good or bad. Because a character's flat doesn't mean that it's a bad character. Flat can be bad, but it's not always bad. Flat can be intentional. Like if you didn't intend to write the character that has a role, that's the way the character is, then that's fine. We talk about static characters that are not dynamic. They don't change over time. They kind of are static. And Forrest Gump, if any of you have seen that movie, is an example of that. Like he's a sweet, almost naive person from beginning to the end of the movie. Although he traverses a huge span of history and so many things, transformative things happen in his life, but the essence of who he is still very much, a static character, right? So look at the handout. It's really there to give you some tips and some guidance on how to develop characters and things to keep in mind. So the idea of character development, I want to, again, connect it to grading because very often when I write in my comments, I'll talk about plot, character, and setting. Also in the handout section, there's a rubric. And a rubric is, it's kind of like a guide for grading. So take a look at the rubric so you can see what I'm looking for and what is considered excellent. And of course, some of that is subjective, but I'm looking at characters, I'm looking at plot, I'm looking at themes. I am looking at some that you're following the formatting, so all those things contribute to your grade of your papers. I want to say something about the overall grading for the class, right? So of course, the work that you're generating, the stories carry the most weight, right? But they're not your total grade, right? What also contributes to your grade is how carefully you respond, or how thoughtfully, I should say, you respond to your classmates' workshops. I give you guidelines. The first one was 3 constructive, 3 positive, or things you liked, or 3 constructives or questions you had. Some of you were very sparse in that feedback, so it doesn't really give your classmates a lot to work on, and that's being a workshop is important, for you to give feedback that is ample. You're going to want it from people, so you should give it to people, right? That's what you do. It takes me a long time to grade because it takes me like an hour to grade every single paper in the class, and the reason it takes me an hour because I read it more than once. I make corrections throughout the I'm doing a little more than your classmates because I'm also doing line edits so in your piece, but then I also give you feedback at the end, but and a grade, of course, but the activity that I'm doing with each work, I sit with it. So I apologize that it took me a little longer. I'm trying to pace myself so that I can get my feedback to you all faster. But it's because of that. So imagine if I have 24 of you, I spent about 24 hours, and I'm not doing it all in one day because those last 4 or 5 people will be getting the short end of the stick. So I have to pace myself, like to do 3 or 4 or 5 almost every day, so that I can do them all. So look at the rubric, and just keep in mind that yes, do the best you can on your story so you can get the best grade there. But the grade isn't totally reliant upon your stories, that it's part of it, right? That your edits also matter, that your feedback also matter, how you respond to the readings matters. Are you giving substantial responses, or are you just putting like one sentence? So keep all of that in mind and continue doing the work. All of you are doing really wonderful work. I really enjoyed reading the stories, and I'm looking forward to reading the revisions, and then of course eventually, and also the new story. I'm always excited to when I start seeing you all populate the feed, the Blackboard thread with your stories. So again, thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your work, and we'll keep going. And have a good week.